Welcome to More Than a Paycheck, the podcast for high achievers who feel trapped in their job but know something has to change. If your bad manager and toxic work environment have you stressed and working crazy hours, and you want an easier solution than finding a new job, you're in the right place. Let's do this. Hey, how you holding up? Okay, just a reminder, I'm working on something I'm so excited about in the background. It's going to be amazing. It's something I've never offered before. And it's coaching in a whole new way. And my goal is to make it accessible to everyone. So you do not need to be an executive. This is not going to cost you thousands of dollars. It's so affordable. It's so helpful. I'm just to the point now where I have more people that want help from me than I have time to. So I'm switching out some things. And because I've been doing this for so long, I've really been able to hone some things that are super helpful to people to get results fast. So if you're feeling stuck in your job, if you feel like you're not making the money you deserve, if you feel unmotivated and like you have no options because finding a new job right now is scary and doesn't seem appealing to you, stick around. Go to lindsaylymancoaching.com/waitlist. Join the waitlist. You will be the first ones to find out about this new opportunity. Again, it's going to be incredible. It's still going to be private, one-on-one coaching with me, and it's going to cost less than what you pay for your cell phone every month. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Make sure you're on the waitlist because when I do launch it, I'm only going to take a few people to put through for the first time. So if you want to be one of those people, get in. Why the price is still low, make sure you are on the wait list. All right, today we're going to kick off our imposter syndrome series. We're going to dive into this over the course of 4 different episodes so that you really understand how do you gain a hold of this and how do you deal with it when you feel like an imposter. So as I started to work on the outline for this topic, I was laughing so hard because I remember the time I felt imposter syndrome the most. And now I can look back at it and laugh and be like, I was an idiot because I was, and that's okay. But I remember there was a moment in my career where I had just been hired on with a branding agency. And most of my background up until that point had been in marketing. And I was transparent about that and they knew that. And I wanted to learn the branding side. The company I was working for was based in New York, but I was based in Seattle because I was client facing and our client was based in Seattle. So I go to my very first client meeting. I haven't met any of them and I don't really know what I'm doing, right? I don't know branding. And I walk into this meeting and the way it was set up was I was like the branding arm of this agency and my agency had kind of like what I would call a sister agency that did the advertising side of things for this client. So I'm sitting in a meeting. It's the client. There's a dozen of them in the room. The sister agency, and me. New girl, knows nothing about branding, okay? So I'm sitting there, and they're reviewing things, and they're going over things, and this is like a very large, nationally known client that's a very common name that you all would know. And so they're talking about these new TV ads that they're running, and at the time, they had just changed logo. So again, I hear logo, and I think, oh, branding, this is me. And my job is to help ensure that we're aligning to this client's brand, right? And so they had worked on putting together these television spots and they were using the old logo. So I naively raised my hand and I'm like, okay, well, yep, we're just going to need to pull all those down and swap out the logos before we can use it again. And I wish I had it on camera, you guys. It was amazing because I say this very confidently knowing I just made this up. I just pulled this right out of my butt. I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But here I am trying to add value and trying to help their brand. And the sister agency executive leaders who are like 10 times above me, right? They all just kind of look over at me and smile and they go, yeah, we're not going to do that. And then they go back to the meeting and they keep going. And I just remember sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm doing. They know I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this is terrible and horrible. I felt like such an imposter in that very moment. So just know it's common. We've all been there. If you're feeling like an imposter in what you're doing, it's okay. Hang on. So today I want to start by talking a little bit about what is imposter syndrome, where did it come from, like what's the history of this phrase, And I want to tell you the number one biggest problem with imposter syndrome. Okay. And it's not what you think. So make sure you stick around to hear this. So imposter syndrome was identified in the 70s. Okay. This term was coined in the 70s by a group of researchers that were interviewing a handful of professional women. And they saw a trend with women when they were trying new things and they were feeling uncomfortable and they weren't sure what to do. And these researchers gave it a name, right? And they called it imposter syndrome. Now, I kind of wish they'd named it something else because syndrome makes it sound like it's like a disease, like it's something you have. It's not a mental condition. It's not a disease. It's just something people feel while they're learning new things and growing. The founder of Girls Who Code, Reshma Saujani, she's amazing. And she gave a commencement speech to Smith College in 2023 talking about imposter syndrome. And I love this analogy she gave. So I want to tell it to you. I'll link to her commencement speech in the show notes. It's so good. If you have a couple minutes to go listen to it, do. Okay, so keep in mind, imposter syndrome, founded in the 70s, some researchers interviewing professional women, they see this trend and they name it imposter syndrome. And now we all talk about it like, oh my gosh, it's this terrible, horrible thing I have. So what Reshma talks about is in the 1890s, there was a term that researchers again named that they called bicycle face. Okay, now before I tell you what bicycle face is, let's keep in mind what's going on in the 1890s. This is when the bicycle starts to become more popular and used as a mode of transportation, right? So when the bicycle first came out, the front had this really big wheel and the back had a small wheel on it. Well, women at the time traditionally wore hoop skirts, which were large and massive and weren't going to work on these bikes, okay? So fast forward a little bit and bikes now evolved to having two wheels that are the same size, and this is really when biking takes off, especially for women, right? Because now we have bikes and we no longer need to wait for a gentleman to show up on a horse to take us where we need to go. At the same time as bikes are taking off and more women are using them, now we're no longer wearing hoop skirts because those are not very logical and don't work great on a bike. And so women wanted to start wearing bloomers. This is a way for women to start entering the world in a new way. And bikes were threatening to what was known as the status quo at that time. And so these researchers named bicycle face, gave this syndrome a name at the time because they were trying to prevent women from progressing and having their own mode of transportation and changing from wearing skirts to wearing pants, right? Listen to the symptoms, okay, of bicycle face. So if you were diagnosed with the symptoms of bicycle face, here's what might be happening to you while you're riding a bike. Your cheeks might get flushed. You might have like a hard clenched jaw. You might breathe heavily with your eyes bulging. Okay? So what you and I would call exercise and your heart working hard to pump blood through your body while you're exerting this energy, at the time they named it bicycle face like it was a problem and it was a thing. And by the way, only women had bicycle face. Okay? So I want you to compare that to imposter syndrome. Where imposter syndrome came from, same concept, but we've just now evolved the name bicycle face to imposter syndrome. Because here's the biggest problem with imposter syndrome. We think it's a problem to be solved. Just like if someone rode their bicycle to my house and they were a little bit sweaty and their face was a little bit flushed and they were like clenching their jaw and their eyes were kind of big because they're like trying to breathe heavily, I would never think something is wrong. Oh my gosh, what do we need to do? This is bad. Let's fix you. The same thing is true with imposter syndrome. When you think, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm worried other people know that I don't know what I'm doing and this is hard and I'm in the early learning phase because I've never done this before, not a problem to be solved. If you've never done it before, if it's new, if it's your first, second, or third time doing it, of course you're going to be bad at it. But you have to do it to get good at it. So really, to me, I'm just like, oh, that's the symptoms of doing a new thing. Just like the symptoms of exercise is I sweat and my face gets all red and I breathe heavy. The symptoms of doing a new thing are I feel dumb, I make mistakes, and I worry people are going to judge me. Okay, so the biggest problem with imposter syndrome is thinking it's a problem to be solved. And this is a problem because what happens is we use it as an excuse not to do the scary thing. We use our fear of feeling like an imposter as an excuse to not apply for the job, or to not try and lead that new program, or to speak up in a meeting, or to share an idea, or to give a suggestion, or to try something new because we don't want to have this imposter syndrome. It's not a definition of your personality. It's not like you're an imposter. It's just something you feel sometimes. This same concept, I think, applies to a lot of different things in the mental health space. I love that we talk about mental health in a much more open, accepting way than we have traditionally in the past. I think that is great and wonderful. But what I don't think is helpful, which I also see a lot of in the mental health space, is we get diagnosed with something, we label the thing, and we take it on as part of our identity. And like, well, this is just me. There's nothing I can do. And I don't actually think that's helpful. The reason we want to name it, the reason we want to diagnose it is we want to give words to it so that we can find a way to best deal with it, not use it as an excuse. Emotional resilience is showing up while life continues to happen. It's not trying to cure all of the quote unquote bad things. It's not trying to get rid of all of our trauma and our hard things. Like, yes, we want to work on it, but guess what? A lot of those things are going to be with us. The problem isn't that you feel like an imposter sometimes. The problem is that you believe you're an imposter and that's bad and you're stuck. When in reality, you are not an imposter. You feel like an imposter sometimes, and that's okay. I actually think it's really healthy to feel imposter syndrome at times because it's telling you this is an area where you have room to grow and you want to get better at it. You know where you don't feel like an imposter? Things you don't give a crap about. Okay? So if you feel like an imposter, that's a beautiful thing. That means it's working. That means you have a desire to get better and you've identified a space where you can grow and you want to. That is beautiful. That is literally part of the learning process. So, in our next episode, I'm going to talk about what do you do if you feel like you're struggling with feeling like an imposter. But today, just remind your brain, I am not an imposter. I'm just feeling like an imposter. And it's totally fine to feel this way. I know it seems small and simple, but it's everything. That shift from taking it away from your identity and just believing you're not good and this is hard and it's not supposed to be hard and I want to give up, to just acknowledging this is just feeling hard and it will shift and change. And then it'll get hard again and then it'll shift and change. And then it'll get hard again and it'll shift and change. It's totally fine. You are not an imposter. You just feel like an imposter, and that's very okay. It's very welcome here. All right, y'all, you're amazing. Make sure that you're subscribed so that you can dive into next week where I'm going to give you some things to do if you are feeling like an imposter. All right, you got this. You're amazing. We'll talk soon. Hey, you didn't schedule a coffee chat yet. Remember, that's the next step. There's so much more I can help you with. You're going to leave this coffee chat knowing a few things you can try right now, depending on your specific situation.
This is not a sales call. My goal is simply to help however I can. If I do think coaching can help, I can tell you about it, but I'm currently on a wait list for new clients. Click the link in the show notes or go to lindsaylymancoaching.com/chat to get on my calendar. I only offer a few coffee chats a week and it's first come, first serve, so don't wait. Chat with you soon.